Hi guys and welcome back. Today I'm joined by Jen Fenner, Managing Director of DefProc Limited, really exciting industrial design IoT startup company from Liverpool. Hi Jen, welcome to the table.
Hello, it's exciting.
So this podcast is all about talking about leadership and people's journeys and how people are building a better future with UK businesses. So why don't you start us off with a little bit about your background? So you're really interesting. You're a designer by first discipline, aren't you? That's moved into management of a manufacturing business.
Yeah, I feel like my career has sort of gone on quite what do they call it, like a squiggly career. So I've done all sorts of different things. But yeah, I started off doing textile design actually at Loughborough University, sort of back in 2002, 2005. And then sort of took a sideways move into electricity distribution company. Used to work in the head office for Central Networks and E.ON. And then I've moved back to do creative. So I set up my own creative agency, did some graphic design work for conferences and that sort of thing. Was an exhibiting artist for a while, and then moved into actually running DefProc, because what we needed at that particular time was we needed someone with really good project management skills, being able to run a company, but also someone that had really good design vision and understanding of how we make our products look really good as well as just functional.
Fantastic. And so for people to understand, what does DefProc do?
So we're an innovation partner for a whole variety of different businesses. So we tend to work with small businesses, large businesses, and we support them on things like proof of concepts, prototyping, design for manufacture. We also do kind of small run production. So we're kind of like the bridge between once you've kind of started building your products, getting it out for testing, and then moving to kind of more scale up, so moving into the thousands plus with a contract manufacturer basically. But we also provide a lot of support around kind of funding, kind of the business side of things, kind of your strategy on how you actually get from your idea all the way to commercialization. That's something we've kind of brought in recently. So we noticed that there's a big gap from actually the idea actually getting fully commercialised.
Fantastic. So, I mean, it seems like it's one of those sort of overnight successes that's been 10 years in the making. The company started in 2013 and you guys have kind of gone from strength to strength. And one of the things that struck me when I was kind of reading your bio in the background is DefProc itself was sort of almost born out of the maker community. Is that fair to say? Is as a response to the absence of companies that would do those prototyping runs, you built your own?
Yeah, so we started off because we had our own kind of product that we wanted to develop. But when we went direct to a manufacturer with kind of our technical drawings and all the rest of it, we're like, can we just make one? We just want to see if it works. And the manufacturer's like, we don't ever just make one of anything. We either make 1,000 or nothing. And we were like, oh, okay. What we going to do? And then we did meet a really kind manufacturer who said, you need to probably make it yourself first and find a way to do that. So we were like, okay, well, what are we going to do? How are we going to do this? And Patrick, who's co-founder, he then went to a makerspace. So he found Does Liverpool, and that was very, very new in its infancy. So it was a co-working space with a quite primitive workshop, so laser cutters, for kind of early 3D printing. This is sort of, around 2012, 2013. And then there we met loads of other people who were also in a similar situation. They've got great ideas for products, but didn't have the technical skills to actually make it and couldn't find anybody that could just make them one to just try it out. So Patrick then offered his expertise because he's got a great sort of engineering mind. He really loves solving problems, and he kind of took all these ideas on, and we started doing it for just a few £100 here and there, and then gradually sort of built it up.
So you built the business pretty organically. It's been built. It's not massive injections of venture capital funding. You've built it around the customer. Is that fair to say? Yeah,
basically, we've sort of. We never intended to start a kind of prototyping business. Our initial business was we were going to create our own product, and that was what we were going to sell. And the prototype business was where there was a gap, and we have literally just followed kind of all of the opportunities, and each opportunity that we've had has kind of got bigger, more high profile, and to sort of like where we where we are today. But yeah, for a lot of years, there hasn't been a growth strategy. There hasn't been we're going to go for this amount of investment. We're going to do this. It's been very much, okay, what's the next thing? Oh, that's interesting. We'll do that for a bit. Oh, okay, this next thing's interesting. We'll do that for a bit. And yeah, and it's just sort of grown that way.
That kind of doing something that you see is interesting, where you can add value, that's led to an interesting product lineup for you guys and a set of projects to talk us through last sort of few years of where you've got to with different products and how they came about.
Yeah, so we've got quite a lot of things. I think our first big one really was when we started doing some work for the Environment Agency, and that was kind of around 2015, 2016. So it was obviously a few years back now, but that was our kind of first kind of big break. So initially we were working for a lot of individuals who were just making their kind of proof of concepts. And then we started working with the Environment Agency, and we just had a very, very basic website at the time. But one of the things that we did alongside kind of our making for other people was we also did some little Arduino courses, so teaching people how to use microcontrollers. Yeah. So things like, how to make an LED come on, or get data from a basic web page. And the kind of the head of hydrometry and telemetry team at the Environment Agency found our little website and was like, oh, you do this sort of thing. Would you be interested in having a conversation? And he came in and he met Patrick, and basically that's kind of started almost kind of like a nearly 10-year relationship with the Environment Agency. So we did.
So most startups would kill for that. Is a government contract, Environment Agency to develop a novel piece of technology. That's
yeah. So we did kind of a lot of different bits of research for them. So initially we did. We made the set of bespoke devices for them for river level sensors, because what they wanted to do was they wanted to be able to monitor remotely kind of further upstream. So whereas they do have kind of stations dedicated to monitoring river levels, they wanted to know kind of further upstream, much more remote locations. And the work that we did was around, okay, what are the options for connectivity, battery life, all of those sorts of things. And then there was also an issue that the Environment Agency identified, was that they were being sold a lot of technology but actually wasn't quite fit for purpose, and they wanted to kind of empower their staff on, can they make their own sort of little devices that get them the data that they want. So we then started doing, I think it was over 2 years, we did kind of like a national training program with them, where we went all over the country.
So you're training the technologists within the organisation.
Yeah. So we did basically we expanded kind of the Arduino course that we were doing in Liverpool for just individuals, and we expanded it over to like a three-phase program. And Patrick travelled all around the country delivering that course for them. And I think in the process there, he met someone at the National Fisheries Service, and then we started doing some work for the National Fisheries Service on fish counting and how can we automate some of their processes. Wow. So yes, that was kind of our first big one.
Yeah.
And yeah, but there's lots more. Would you like me to go into some more?
Yeah, go into social care and 5G. You've kind of moved into as well. So
yeah, so while we were doing the Environment Agency, we've also done loads of creative projects for museums as well while all that was going on. But yeah, the 5G project, that was, I felt quite a privilege to be included in that consortium, because we were so small, and at that time it was just the two of us, and that was when I became managing director. So we worked with Liverpool City Council as part of a health and social care hack day, and one of the challenges that they were facing was loneliness, as particularly in the kind of the elderly population, but also those people in that particular age bracket at that particular time were like, we don't want technology, we don't want iPads, we like our landline phone and our TV. And those were kind of some of the constraints. And then we had an idea that came out of, I think, probably like a collective chat on that day, which was called Push to Talk, which was to develop a service that worked directly with the landline. So you could push the button, and if the person wants to talk to someone, and then that would then mean that their phone would ring, someone else's phone would ring, and they could just sit and have a chat.
Over tone signal rather than TCP/IP.
So it went through a number of connectivity kind of revisions, and we did learn an awful lot during that project, because that project lasted about 5 years. So we're like the first round, we did some work with we got some Innovate UK funding, and it was like, well, we'll just use everybody's broadband, that'll help connect everybody together. But then we found that basically 50% of the trial group that had been identified didn't actually have broadband. So we're like, okay, well that's not going to work. And then we decided to use a different technology, and that proved to be challenging. And then we used a further revision of the technology, and then that was actually worked much better. So we've been around in IoT for a long time. We've seen lots of those challenges, but that particular social care product highlighted a lot of the challenges around kind of technology adoption, and that it isn't like the technology is the really, really easy part, but it's actually incorporating it into the infrastructure. So, for example, for social care, a lot of departments, so Liverpool City Council or any other or local authority that we've worked with, they don't always have like a digital lead for somebody who can actually get the technology out to the people that need it. So we had a lot of challenges with that, but the 5G project itself was brilliant because it was funded directly through DCMS, so Department for Culture, Media and Sport. So it meant that my first official project management job as part of being managing director was with central government funded project. Never been a project manager before, and had to learn on the job what I was doing, and we delivered everything we said we were going to deliver, and it was kind of like a real kind of proud moment for me in my career. I was like, right, okay, we've done that. I've delivered this. We delivered the test group, and we had some great feedback from the people who actually took part in that as well. So that was brilliant.
Fantastic. And now you're moving into renewables technologies and hydrogen.
Yeah, so we've done quite a number of projects even in between there, but we're moving into hydrogen now. So we did some work initially with Northern Gas Networks and Wales and West through the EIC. So we answered a call for basically, is there any innovators that can produce a proof of concept basically of a domestic hydrogen sensor, so something that would replace kind of your carbon monoxide sensor in the future. And they just kind of wanted to see if it was possible. Was there a low cost version? Because hydrogen sensors are typically around kind of £250. So if we wanted to roll it out across the UK, and obviously the individual homeowners in charge of actually buying themselves the sensors, no one's going to pay £250. So the challenge was, can we make a device that would cost sort of between £5 and £12?
Wow.
So we did that project for about 12 months with them, and that essentially created kind of like the blueprint for the first one. I think there's been further development on that by other companies and other manufacturers, but that was where we then met the kind of the team from Northern Gas, and then we've gone on to produce a kind of smart gas pressure sensor, which is essentially for the rollout of hydrogen, but it's developed for natural gas or blended gas, so that it's kind of future proofed. Yeah. So it definitely can be.
So it's LNG and hydrogen compatible.
Yeah. But the idea behind that product, it will essentially digitize in the future. Will essentially digitize kind of the gas network and give them kind of basically unprecedented visibility of how much gas is going to people's homes, but also if there's any sort of gas leak or any sort of low pressure event, it will shut off the gas to that property automatically, send a message to the operations team, and then send a message to the customer to say your gas has been affected. An engineer will be out to see you. So because at the moment, if say like there's a low pressure incident, somebody's boiler goes off, or they wake up in the morning, they've got no hot water, and actually it's because there's been a problem with the gas, and then the customer then has to ring gas network to say, I've got no gas, and then obviously everyone in that area that's affected also has to ring in. Yep. And it means then that they have to send engineers out, they have to turn every single person's gas supply off. But if one person isn't available or they're on holiday or whatever it is and they can't get into that property to turn it off, everybody has to wait until all the gas in that area can be turned off so they can actually do the work. So it's so potentially it's be time saving. It'll really help automate some of their operations and support them with reduction in their fines, basically, for having customers off supply for too long.
How do you get into that supply chain? I mean, we want to talk about the leadership journey and the skill set as a designer and how that's kind of been part of your USP and secret sauce, particularly in a family business as well. But how do you get into those supply chains? Because they from the outside, they look pretty rigid and old-fashioned and big framework agreements and conservative, but you're a British SME that's, on the cusp of manufacturing a key component for a radical infrastructure shift in net zero technologies if we move over to hydrogen mains.
I think a lot of it has been to do with the way I talked about kind of how we've followed our business path. So we've because we're so small, we're able to sort of adapt and shift through the opportunities. So because we applied for that EIC contract, Patrick's very interested in the kind of research side of things, and it's very easy to, not easy, that's the wrong thing to say, but has a different way of thinking about things. So is then able to present an idea clearly. This is how we would do it, and then that often gets buy-in quite quickly because we're very good at being able to map out, this is what the project will look like before we've even started anything, and then that often gets buy-in, that builds trust, and then we're then able to obviously deliver on that. And then we've then built that relationship with Northern Gas Networks, who then commissioned us directly to do the smart gas pressure sensor, because they were like, what do you think of this idea? We're like, well, we'd approach it this way. Okay, that sounds good. And then we went through all of it wasn't a quick win. It took sort of just over 12 months to sort of go from the initial conversations through all of the different stages and committee meetings on their part, and ironing out all the details before we actually started. So they're quite a long lead time, the bigger infrastructure projects, and working with those bigger companies. But yeah, a lot of it is around that kind of relationship building and usually doing a small bit of work really well first, and then kind of getting buy-in from the rest of it.
Totally different from the corporate mentality of, this is the menu, this is the list of products, we'll make the client's requirements fit the products.
Yeah.
Interesting. And I mean, you guys, did you always intend to, it's you and your husband Patrick, did you always intend to go into business together? How did that kind of come together of going into business together?
Well, we've known each other for 22 years, and we met at university. And one of the things that was quite clear between the two of us is we both have a lot of ideas, and particularly in our kind of early 20s, we were just like, what do we want to do? And it was a conversation that we just had. Anytime we were in a long car journey, going anywhere, we were just like, what business can we have? Oh, well, I'd maybe like to do this. I think we had a sandwich shop at one time. I think I was going to start like my own unique kind of colour dyeing service, because I really...
Is your fabrics background?
Yeah, so I was like, I could do, bespoke colours. And we sort of just went through loads of different ideas, and then we eventually settled on the kind of product that we wanted to make. And that was kind of how it went. But yeah, like, although we've had jobs and things, they were never the thing that we wanted. Neither of us really are very good at being employed, because we have too many ideas. I can always see in whatever process there is, I'm always like, oh no, this needs to be different. And I was always one of those employees, even like, straight out of uni, that would challenge leadership, and I don't think they appreciated it very much.
It's a classic characteristic of an entrepreneur is entrepreneurs are unemployable, because you will always
challenge
a solution, never take the convention as the accepted answer.
Always challenge it. And I can, unless I'm fully bought into the process, I'm always like, I don't like this process because it doesn't make sense. We should do it a different way. Why do we do it this way? And that's always been, I think that's one of my strong suits as part of our business as well, is I will challenge our clients as well. So why do we want to do it this way? What's the reasoning? And although they have great ideas, I always want to make sure that they're doing it the best way and they haven't just kind of settled on the first idea, like, well, we should do it this way. And it's like, well, actually, there's a whole big there's a whole horizon out there of ideas that you haven't fully explored. And I think we need to just make sure that we're not just settling here, but actually the better solution is over there and we need to work through those ideas. And I think having that design background, although it's something that's not really talked about as part of that kind of creative degree, is you have real kind of critical thinking. So you have to analyse your designs, you have to analyse your research and development. No design ever just kind of comes out of somebody's head. It's come from a source of inspiration and then kind of followed through and evolved and changed, and until you actually get something that's completely unique and different. And that's sort of the same for designing electrical products or product design, and it kind of lends itself really, really well, that skill set for me.
And it's interesting because design thinking is now becoming the new mantra for a lot of the management training stuff, a lot of the change management stuff is start with design thinking. And when I think of you and DefProc, you're innovative and creative at kind of the object level or the very zoomed in level, but there's always, in the back of your head, it always seems like you're thinking systematically about the wider system, the wider picture.
Yeah, very much so. So design thinking as a process is something that I try and touch on, but always kind of stay a little bit away from, because design thinking can often end up shoehorning you down a particular avenue. So you've ended up with a solution, but actually it doesn't necessarily solve the problem when you zoom out. So when you try to place it in the infrastructure, so for example, talking about like the smart gas pressure sensor, the questions I had before we even started that project is, has the client considered how this will be adopted at scale? Yes, we haven't started anything, but is that thought process there? Do they understand what they would need to actually implement this? So what's the operational change that's going to happen to be able to make use of the data, to be able to make use of the sensor being implemented at scale? So sometimes that just adds that bit of extra thought can make a real difference, because sometimes when you start thinking, and especially in terms of the bigger picture, you can sort of go, actually, this isn't the right thing that we should be doing. We should be doing this over here instead, because that fits into our current services, our current operation processes, and that kind of thing. And I think particularly innovate, like any sort of innovative technology, whether it's software, whether it's hardware, software combination, the process that it fits into has to be considered, because if it isn't, you just ended up shoehorning a whole new thing in, and everyone's like, well, why is this here? And you're like, well, this is just our new content management system, or it's just our new thing, and I want you to use this now. And it's like, well, but why? And actually, what's the process, and how are we making sure the data that we're putting in is the right thing? Or this sensor here, okay, so it's going to tell us something. What do we do once we know? What's the processes that come after that? So I'm very much always thinking in the bigger picture of what we're actually doing.
So you always start with the why for the client. Does that go the same as sort of all the wider leadership sort of activities of the businesses? You know, whenever you think about bringing new people on, or you think about which markets to get into, is that where you start? Is the why?
Yeah, it's always. I think it has to be like, why do we want to do this, or why are we doing this way? Is there a better way that we can be? I don't know whether it's doing work proposal. Is there a better way? Is there a better process here? Can we shorten this down? And I've got really good, I think, over the last couple of years, particularly this year, at looking at kind of efficiency, like product efficient, like our production efficiencies. Are we working at the full capacity? Are we doing our best? Is this process understandable to our clients? Is it taking too long? All of those sorts of things. And it has kind of changed the way we're doing things, because if we want to grow, one of the things we have to be more systematic about is managing all of our sales, managing how we actually, once we get a lead, how that actually, you know, what the process is for that, but also, is it fast enough? Are we landing these things quick enough? Because as we've had this organic approach of, oh, there's this opportunity over here, let's do this, and there's that opportunity over there, let's do that, that actually we can't grow if that's what we're focusing on. So yeah, we've had to systemize the business and really look at everything to do with pipeline and all the rest of it. And yeah, I've kind of had to lead on that slight culture change, if you like.
What would you say to kind of people coming up, from kind of creative and arts background in particular, who'd never potentially see themselves as MDs of manufacturing businesses or engineering companies? What would be your advice to 21-year-old coming out of university if you say, somebody who wants to change the world, who's got a passion or a mission? What, if you could have your time again, what sort of personalities do you think those people should surround themselves with, and what's the fastest route up the honest ladder to leadership and competent leadership, rather than the aspirational bit? Do you think, if you were coaching somebody?
I think the bit that I've been mentored on is what is your core purpose? What is the thing that you do every day, regardless of whether it's in a job or at home or you support your friends? And the work I've done is I've found that I'm really good at being very observant of the big picture. And that's the thing that I bring. And that's really good for leadership. It's really good for understanding really big, complex ideas. And I think whether you're, arts, design base, usually you tend to have that kind of much bigger picture thinking, and kind of much more focused on kind of the future, because design is designed to change things, change the way we do things, either make it better or bring in something completely different. And design isn't just sitting and drawing the idea, it's actually the whole concept. So I think anybody who is coming out of university with a design degree, whatever design degree that is, and they're finding, actually, I'm not satisfied in fashion, I'm not satisfied in being a buyer, I'd actually like to do something completely different. I'd like to move into those more leadership positions. It's harnessing your ability to break things down, to see the bigger picture, to imagine something different. And those skills are not something everybody has, and they are really quite special. So you should really make the most of your ability to imagine something different, and that things can be different, and really work through those processes, and don't be shy of that either.
Fantastic. And do you think we need to be doing more for people to bring them into kind of those leadership roles, or to bring them into entrepreneurship in general from the workforce?
I think entrepreneurship's one of those where I think you do have to be a certain type of person. I don't think it's for everybody, but I do think if you've got an idea and you can think big enough about it, and you've got the drive to see it through, then I think it's definitely something that we should be encouraging, because I do think a lot of business, potentially really good businesses, sort of fall down at that sort of first hurdle of, okay, I've got this great business, I've got this great idea, but I don't know how to get it off. I don't know how to get it off the ground. I don't know what I need to be doing. I think there's a lot of business support programs around, but if you're just somebody who's, I don't know, working in their usual job, they don't necessarily know that there's all the business support programs that there are, even just in, Liverpool City region, and it's making that available and more accessible, so that they can see, actually, I've got someone to talk to about this idea and how I would move it forward and what I need to do. Because I think sometimes when you kind of end up being put in a position where it's like, okay, well, we can help you with your pitch deck. And it's like, well, what's a pitch deck? So if you just said to me in 2013, and I've got this business idea, and the first thing anyone said to me was, well, we can support you with your pitch deck as a first step. Like, okay, well, what's a pitch deck? What needs to be in there? And I was like, well, I've only got this sort of idea. I think it could do this, but I don't know the rest of the route. So it's I think it's supporting people to almost kind of like fill in the blanks on some of that. But yeah, I think people just need a lot of support to actually get through starting their business.
And you guys have worked on not just the business kind of skills support, but DefProc and the maker kind of community you've been involved in has been there with kind of the communal kit as well, hasn't it? You've shared experiences, you've shared skills, you've shared access to equipment, and that's been a way to get people started and get the ball rolling.
No, it was, we wouldn't be able to do what we're doing now if we hadn't had access to laser cutters and soldering irons and basic 3D printers at the time. Like we really utilised that space. So one of the things Patrick did as part of his time with Does Liverpool was he would actually maintain the laser cutter, and he would do inductions. So new people that wanted to come in, he would do the inductions, and he would look after the workshop space in return for having a desk. So he gave his he gave his time in order to have a desk. So he would then be split between sorting the workshop out and then our own business, and that's really, basically that was kind of like the foundation for it. And at that particular time as well, we had a lot of people kind of go into that space. Like Fact, Liverpool with the gallery would quite often come there and be like, oh, we need someone to support with this particular project. So we did quite a few exhibitions or exhibition pieces with Fact at that time as well.
So you engineer installations and exhibitions for arts and heritage.
So we did that. We used to do a lot of interactive museum. We used to do a lot of interactive museum installations using sensors and all sorts of stuff. We built a 4D cinema once for the Bradford Science Media Museum, which was quite fun. But they were always our little fun projects. But since kind of Arts Council funding's been cut over the last couple of years, we haven't had anywhere near as many of those little extra museum pieces of work. I think just because museums aren't updating their exhibits as often, they're not on a shorter rotation, so we haven't been able to do as many of those creative projects, but we're just doing a lot of engineering instead.
And that's for you guys and your journey. You sit at an interesting intersection between kind of creative and digital manufacturing and kind of innovation and consultancy bits. So what's your views on kind of the startup scene in the UK? Because you as a business and you personally, you always come across as very considered, very mature. It's a totally different kind of mentality to the typical kind of, move fast, break things startups scene. So is that fair to say?
I think with the startup culture, it all depends on what stage of startup you're at as well. But I think in terms of the live fast, die young business thing, I feel like that's definitely not been something we've wanted to do. We've always wanted to have a steady revenue generation and be able to provide support to the startups essentially. So one of the things that we've done in the past is we've actually been a kind of startups tech team, so that particularly when they're on that very first bit, that journey to kind of like the MVP, we've been that tech team, because often they've got the idea but they can't technically deliver it. Some founders can, but even then, having almost like an external eye can really help with that. But I think the startup scene is brilliant, particularly like Manchester. Manchester's got an amazing kind of startup culture. I think Liverpool is behind.
It's mature and it's
not quite there yet. There's a lot of people with a lot of ideas and really great ideas. I think I really hope that they get to kind of take off and scale as they need to. But yeah, I can't be the live fast, die young business.
Which is for so many of the businesses we work with, it's the slower, steady burn is the kind of the obsession with scaling quickly and kind of seed funding and so much of it is driven by the investors. Want to get in, see a massive scale in value, get out, move it onto the next person. Do you think that kind of that US tech bro entrepreneurship culture is is kind of a fish out of water in the UK, or do you think we've got space to create our own sort of version of it?
I think we've got space to create our own version. I feel like the money in the UK isn't this anywhere near the same scale as the US. So it's so yeah, I feel like investors are very tentative in the UK, and like we haven't had investment, but it feels like, particularly in like the last 2 years, it feels as though there isn't as much money going into other things. There's loads of money going into AI. As soon as you've got an AI product, people are throwing money at you, but not in other, but not necessarily in other areas. But also I think in the UK as well, we have difficulty with adoption of new technology. So particularly like medical tech. There's so much advancement in medical technology, but it cannot break the barrier into the NHS.
Which is crazy because we've got the largest kind of state-owned healthcare system, large number of employees in Europe, and the NHS should be an easy win for innovating and developing tech and rolling it out and delivering value to customers, I guess. So your experience with that,
and my experience of working with quite a few different companies is that the opportunities are there. The technology that's being created will solve so many problems, but it's the bureaucracy of actually getting it through into any of the NHS trusts. And naturally, if you're going to try and enter that market, you've really got to understand how it all works. And it isn't just a case of we're going to create an app and we're going to sell it to the NHS. It's like, well, which trust? Which bit? And do you know somebody that actually operates in there so that you can go and talk to that clinician, make sure that it's definitely needed? And how does your app, device, whatever it is, how does that fit in the patient pathway? How does it fit in terms of the treatments? What would need to change? And then all of the other considerations and regulatory bits around it. So it's quite complex trying to deliver something like that. And I think it does need, in order to actually get your idea particularly to the NHS, you've got to have really long lead time, which means you need an awful lot of money to be able to keep going, because there are so many businesses kind of fall into that valley of death where they're waiting for that customer, they're waiting for that next bit of investment, and they're just sort of sitting like, well, we can't do anything, but we've got this thing, and if we all have to go home and do something else, then this will no longer exist and this will be no longer available. So I think the money and the ideas need to meet up much faster, and I think we need to really understand those routes to market for scale, particularly across the UK.
So there's kind of talk about using more of UK pension fund money to invest in the UK, and we kind of hear about Labour government's sort of mission to invest in infrastructure. Do you think that will help? Do we need more kind of place-based or community-based sort of ring-fenced initiatives to say, look, money into this, and we're going to draw universities and businesses in and do it in place, or do we need plans by the many across the UK?
That's a big question. You've lulled me into a false sense of security there. But no, because I have looked at the kind of the plans for using more of the pension funds. I think one of the big dangers, particularly because obviously my focus is technology, I think one of the big dangers is that the due diligence on the technology isn't done. Because there's lots and lots of ideas, and unless there's like a real kind of clear value to creating these new technologies, whatever they are, and that big picture is fully considered, you can end up where, like you have in the US, where loads of people, you throw loads of money at a business, it grows to a certain amount, but then it just falls over, and everybody's got the money, but nobody's got the technology that was actually the vehicle for the whole thing. Yeah. So I think there has to be real caution around just investing in loads and loads of new technology fast, and trying to grow everything really quickly, because as we know, growing things quickly isn't always the best. And I think looking at the US model, you do get a lot of boom and bust where everyone throws, hundreds of millions of dollars at things, but it still falls over. And the technology that was supposed to be for good no longer exists. So it's so yeah, I feel like we have to be really careful and make sure we actually get real value out of the products and things that basically the money is being put into.
And you've moved sort of from the purely business side into, you work with combined authorities and local government and the devolved agenda. You've gone from representing digital and creative at that level to manufacturing. So talk us through a little bit about kind of your views on the devolution agenda in the UK and how it's helping industry, and your perspective of working with local government.
Yeah, so I've got a seat on the Advanced Manufacturing Board. So it's a sub-board of the business. So there's Business and Enterprise Board, and then there's Digital, Creative, Health and Life Sciences, and Advanced Manufacturing.
This is advising the city mayor.
And this is advising, basically helping form the policies for directly for Steve Rotherham and that office. When I was on the Digital Creative Board, that was part of the Local Enterprise Partnership, and that was a sub-board of the main board, and it was all very complicated, and there was lots of sort of satellite fractions that then fed into that. But because it was the Local Enterprise Partnership, it was sat outside of the combined authority, and it was only really, you could only ever really advise combined authority, whereas the new setup is we are directly linked to the combined authority's policy and advisory. So although it's still an advisory position, it is direct. It is leading direct into policy, and everything being looked at. Anything that comes out of our board in particular is being looked at and considered. So to build basically the new kind of economic plan for the future. But going from digital creative into manufacturing, there is still a lot of crossover, because the advanced manufacturing is looking at how do we automate things, how do we digitize, how can we bring in new technologies, how can we bring in additive manufacturing processes and all of that sort of thing. And it's not just about looking at, because obviously we've got the big companies. So, I'm sat on the board with Trevor Leakes, who's the operations director for Jaguar Land Rover for Halewood and England and Brazil as well. So he's seen a lot. So he's very, very senior person to be working alongside. And the board really is made up of lots of different people. So we're obviously a very small business compared to Jaguar Land Rover, but our experience as being that SME, that micro organisation, feeds in really well. So we've got a very good cross section of experience on that board. So yeah, but I feel like the creative and digital and tech side, similar situations. It's all about kind of how do we bring the area up? How do we attract more investment from outside? How do we bring businesses to the city region so we can bring more jobs and all of that sort of thing? So it's the same agenda, just a different, just a different field.
So a lot of business leaders, particularly kind of small to medium-sized business leaders and scale-ups, they wouldn't think of engaging with the political process. They wouldn't think of engaging with local politicians or with government. What drove you to kind of contribute to that, and what keeps you there as pushing to help inform the agenda?
I think for me, I can see that there's a lot of scope, particularly around getting products and services from idea to commercialisation. I can see there's an enormous gap in kind of what the current offer is. And I've seen lots of businesses sort of really, really struggle to get to that commercialisation point where they can really scale and grow. And that does feed into sort of the manufacturing, because if we want to grow the manufacturing in the region, we also have to empower the businesses to be able to manufacture their products and actually get them to that point. And I think I feel like I have a lot to say on this subject. And I've been told by other people that my contributions are often like really, really well thought out, and actually they do make a difference to what's going on.
Feedback. So kind of my experience in SMEs and background chartered company secretary, there's a craft to board work, and you can spot a good director who's read the brief. They come in with the bundle, everything's marked up, and you don't speak unless you've got something to say, and then everybody else kind of goes, oh wow, you've got that board craft of being able to make an insightful, targeted challenge to conventional wisdom. I guess that comes from the SME bit, and that comes from the running and leading a business that genuinely will succeed or fail on your direction and efforts, whereas bigger organizations, it's a little bit different. So you're a smaller cog in a bigger machine, I guess. Is that some part of your experience?
Yeah, and I think because it is very different if you're employed by a company and then placed on a board. Like, yes, you've got everyone's got a broad range of experience, but when you've kind of lived it, done it, gone through the pain, seeing where seeing particularly where some of our clients have just not been able to make it, or they haven't had the right thinking, and then being able to feed that in and say, look, there's this whole set of people that could contribute massively to our local economy if only we could get them
engaged
to scale. And it is getting them to scale, and I'm quite fascinated because I think the other bit is I love the big picture. So we get given a lot of figures, we get given a lot of research to kind of read through, like, this is the state of the local economy, this sector, and this sector, and we're not doing very well in R&D, particularly the development to commercialisation in the region. And I don't know, I just feel like there's a fascinating bit of like, okay, well, how do we solve that problem? I've seen that the research doesn't always go to development, doesn't always go to commercialisation. We spend loads of money on the research. There's so much support for that early stage ideas, businesses, whether that's through universities or other support programmes. But once you want to actually design the thing to give to your customer to try out, that's where it's basically it stops before then. Because it is just let's just do a little proof of concept and see how it goes. So our business operates in that space, and it's we can see the gap, we can see the problems, and I feel like because I've got that real world, I can contribute to the board in that way.
So for you, kind of going forward, the focus for you on the kind of social side or on the political side is what do you think we should be sort of driving towards next? What's the near field wins to turn local economy around, or to make sure we build a better future for the kids?
I think I'm all about kind of like the baby steps and kind of the education bit. So obviously you've got education in schools, but also for the business owners. And I think there's a huge focus on business support, and when I mean business support, I mean supporting you on how you structure your business. But if you want to bring a product to market, there isn't a lot of education around what you need to do to add those new things. What's the stages of R&D, for example, from your idea all the way to commercialisation, and what's actually involved in those sorts of things. And we've started that conversation with a lot of our clients. I've started some of those conversations with people like Innovate UK, started them here with you, I've started them on the board. And I think being able to sort of fill in that gap in all business support programs across the UK, where it's like, it's not just let's this is how you're going to grow your business. It's like, okay, but how do I grow my business in line with my product development? How does that work? What do we need to do? You know, what are the pitfalls? What experts do I need, and when do I do my customer testing, and who is there somebody that I can talk to about that? And kind of just bring it all together. But I think from the local economy, the bigger picture is that if there's a much more secure environment for founders to come in and be like, right, okay, this is what I want to do. This is where I go and get all of this knowledge. This is where I can get my support to actually deliver the thing for commercialisation. And then I think we end up seeing so many more of our businesses, particularly in the city region, actually stay in the course and not sort of falling over year 2, year 3, because they've ran out of cash, because they couldn't actually get to full commercialisation. And then I think that then obviously leads to more jobs in the area, more places for younger people to move into, whether that's straight out of university or just from local local people. So it's all a big ecosystem that's got to work really well together, I think.
Do you think the debate's maturing? Is that kind of cheerleading for the money and winning the money? Everyone cheerleads about sort of winning the money, and that gets the press release, and no one sees the 12 months of hard graft to get the customer and get the next customer and fulfill the contract. Do you think we're moving to slightly more mature kind of perspective and debate on that?
I think so. I think it's becoming. I think the cost of living and like inflation and all of that, I think, has really brought into focus how difficult it is to run a business in this current economy, and lead times, especially for getting, particularly for us, from signing a client to actually doing the project. A long time ago, it used to be really quick, like, yeah, let's do it. Whereas now decisions are taking a lot longer. And I think for other businesses as well, spend a lot of time with other business leaders and, not necessarily manufacturing, but different fields. And, there's that feeling that we need more, there needs to be more money in the economy in order to serve all of the businesses that are here. So I think there is that has now been recognised, particularly by the Labour government, particularly talking about, we want to invest in more things, we want to move the economy in different ways. But yeah, it's I don't think we're quite there yet. I think there's still a long way to go to get everything back and up and running effectively.
So picking up on that, do we need a moonshot? Do we need the JFK moment of, by the end of the decade, we'll put a man on the moon? By the end of the decade, should we have small modular nuclear reactors? Do you think that would help if there was a rallying cry for here's a technology, we know we've got the R&D in the country, we know we've got the manufacturing base, there's a contract at the end of it, or there's the mission, guys. Do you think a big, a couple of big ticket items like that would be the way to go? Or?
I think so. I think if the government could commit, particularly around things like the bringing hydrogen as part of our changeover for infrastructure, I think we could create so much opportunity with that, particularly around like just the supply chain of building the things that we need to generate the hydrogen, and then obviously all of the sub products and things that come off that. So things like the smart gas pressure sensor, we'd love to make sure that it can be manufactured in the UK. Like, that would be brilliant if we can achieve that. But there has to be that commitment, and I think that's something that we are lacking. There doesn't seem to be like a big there doesn't seem to be like, this is our ambition, this is what we're going to focus our resources on, let's go. And I think we could do with some inspiration, I think.
A bit of ambition and a bit of vision.
Yeah, definitely.
We're doing it, get on board.
Yeah.
And it's interesting because your background's you have a background in electrical industry as well. So the fact that you moved into hydrogen is what are your views on the whole kind of electrification debate and sort of the challenge for infrastructure and EVs and all that kind of thing?
Yeah. So very long time ago, I used to work for E.ON, and one of the conversations that they were having at the time was around sort of renewables, why we needed more renewable sites, and the sort of the plan for the next kind of 15 to 20 years to ensure that we weren't having blackouts and brownouts. We needed more solar energy, we needed more wind, we need more wind, and could we harness tidal as well? So all of those conversations were happening sort of 15-ish years ago, and I happened to be in the room while we were discussing some of those, and it's been really interesting to see how there has been a change, but there hasn't been the update in the infrastructure that has actually been really needed to actually be able to incorporate things like all the electric vehicles. So completely moving from petrol, diesel, hybrids to just electric vehicles will put massive strain on the infrastructure, as well as heat pumps, as well as data centers for running AI. All of those things rely so heavily on the infrastructure, and it feels very much like there's been some short-sighted, as far as my opinion is, there's been some
That's what you're here for. Your opinion,
short-sightedness, and that actually putting money into updating the infrastructure will mean that it is easier to adopt all of those technologies at scale. But is that even the right way to go? I'm still on the fence on that. I think that there needs to be a much more diversification of our renewables. I don't think we can just rely solely on electricity. So yeah, I think there's still a lot of big picture thinking around all of that.
It's interesting that 15 years ago it was a special lunchtime session of geeks in the utility industry that were anticipated or planning. It's like getting into crypto in 2010. You look back and should have paid attention to that, or should have got into that. But I hear kind of. In Australia, they've done a massive rollout of solar. Obviously, Australia's a sunny country, and now the utility companies are charging householders to put energy back into the grid because there's so much surplus capacity from solar. Do you think there's an opportunity there for us to kind of, that's another grand challenge, just say, upgrade the subs, upgrade the infrastructure, demand side generation? Because I guess we're all going to come home, plug a car into a 7.5 kilowatt charger, put a 4 or 5 kilowatt heat pump on, and the tumble dryer and the dishwasher and the washing machine, and just human nature. If you go to work, it's going to be between the hours of 6 and 10 that you're going to have that demand spike.
Yeah.
But you could deal with it with home domestic battery storage. You could deal with it with community level grid generation and storage.
Yeah, I think I actually feel quite privileged because of my design background and all the history that you have to do as part of that. You get to do a lot on the Industrial Revolution, and I feel quite privileged that we're actually in a situation now where we are on a massive industrial revolution, and I have no answers for what's going to come next and how it's going to be managed. I think it's going to be so interesting to see, because there's so many different ideas around at the minute, and I think there'll be a point where somebody, I don't know whether it's like a Thomas Edison type character, will go, we're going to do this, fully back it, market it, and then it's like, right, this is what we're doing. And I think there's still too many like, oh, well, I think heat pumps are great, I think we should do it this way, and we try and build some policies around heat pumps. But then you've got other people going, well, I've had a heat pump and I really hate it, it's awful, and it actually costs me more than it did with my gas. And so nobody's really settled on one way or the other at this present time. But yeah, I think it's absolutely fascinating because there's so many ideas, there's so many different ways that we could go, and I think you'll find like there'll be different pockets of the UK that adopt different things. So yeah, I don't have a full answer, but I just find it really really exciting.
How it's going to pan out.
Yeah,
and kind of the AI sort of revolution. That's the other one that people point to.
Yeah,
rightly or wrongly, I'm not sure. But how do you see that affecting your world? You're embracing sort of more of those technologies. You're looking at ML applications. Is AI going to mean the big guys keep getting bigger and the small guys get smaller? How can we make sure that it's harnessed by British businesses?
I think we have started looking at different AI opportunities just within our own business. How can we make things faster? Are there things what tools can we utilize? And yeah, I see AI very much as a tool, and there's so many things that can be automated using AI. That means that okay, we now don't employ 500 people, but we employ these people to overlook what the AI has produced or whatever it is. And while I don't really like the idea of us having to reduce people involvement in certain processes, I'm also very much like, but if we have the tool, then we should use it to the best of its ability. But I don't think we're quite at a stage where it's going to replace anybody or anything like that. I think everybody's just got to adapt and change, and it is very much a tool, and it has to be applied in the right way and used at the right time. And it's not yeah, I think we'll find very quickly that it's very good at some things, not very good at others, and it doesn't necessarily fit into every business.
It's a nuanced answer that kind of, it's a buzzword. AI is a
Yeah.
buzzword, and fundamentally, everyone I talk to that thinks it through, it's a tool for the business. It's a tool for productivity. It's a tool for growth. It's a tool for creativity.
Yeah.
And arm and pair that with the opportunities in sustainables. That might be a way to homeshore more things and bring more manufacturing back to the UK and make us more competitive and productive, I guess.
Yeah.
If you're thinking through the next kind of 10 years, as you're bringing other leaders up behind you, and as DefProc grows, maybe you're doing more stuff advising government. Where do you, at your position now as MD of DefProc, where do you find your peers for your lifelong learning? Where do you keep refining and building on your leadership skills and build your networks? How do you keep evolving?
So we've actually really solidly utilised the Gather programme actually over the last couple of years, which has combined authority, kind of either part funded or fully funded programmes, and that's all around. They've offered so many different workshops, so many different programmes around, us basically supporting us with creating the right business model for us. So when we first started that programme in particular, I had no idea really that we were an agency. And I know that sounds really like a silly thing to say, that I didn't know we were an agency, but because we've just sort of grown organically, no one had said, right, okay, this is how you grow an agency. Lots of people kept putting like a business model canvas in front of me and being like, this is what you need to do. And I was like, but this doesn't fit because we do all of these different things. This
half of these are relevant.
Yeah, that's all irrelevant. I don't want to, no. And then when someone sat me down, it's like, right, okay, so your business model is an agency and this is how we grow an agency and this is what you need to do. I kind of took me basically step by step all of the things that we need to do, looked at all of our rhythms and routines of the business. How do you improve those? How do I improve myself as a leader? What do I need to be implementing? And then I've sort of just gone on those different programs and different courses. So in September we went on a trip to Amsterdam with the Gather program, and that was basically looking at all world-class digital creative tech businesses and going to visit them and learn about how they grew their business from just being like two founders to a world-leading design agency. And a lot of the processes there are the same as ours. Obviously, we're not doing graphic design or advertising, but working in innovation, we still need to have, really strong brand identity, really, really strong sort of the golden thread, the thing that we do all the way through our business, so that our customers have a great experience with us as much as possible. And that sort of learning about how to build a business, but also learning about culture, learning about how to be a good leader in the business that you're trying to build as well. So there's been a lot of that. I've also had a variety of different mentors as well, all at different stages, that have helped me think about things differently, because I was quite at the start when I first became MD, I was like, I have no idea what I'm doing. I've got a bit of an idea, but I don't really know. And I was very anxious, and I was quite young, so I wasn't quite young, so I was like 33, 34. And I felt like I was quite young to be an MD, because every MD I'd ever met had grey hair and a suit. So it was very difficult for me to see how I should be in this role. And then I've gradually met lots of other business leaders and founders just in the city region, and all at different levels, all different experiences. And we sort of all spend a lot of time together in networking, and we've become great friends, and we'll often just go and have lunch sometimes and be like, oh, I'm really struggling with this, and they'll be like, oh, we struggled with that last year, this is what we did and that helped us. And we're like, okay, right, well, we can bring that in, that would work for us. So there's just a quite
a broad age range, that kind of peer network. Now that you're into it, you kind of look around and you got a broad age range and a broad set of backgrounds, or are you all at sort of a similar point?
No, lots of people are all different ages. Some people are in their early 30s, some people are in their late 50s, early 60s, and have had a really wide variety of careers, and a lot of it really is all about the thing I get told so many times is you've just got to back yourself. So you've got to really know what it is.
Don't blame yourself. Yeah.
What it is that you want to do, why you want to be doing it, and then keep going forward with your plan and just course correct. Every time something comes up, just keep course correcting. But you've got to believe that you can do it, because if, as the leader of the business, whether it's a small business or a really big business, you've got to bring all the staff along on the journey with you. They've got to buy into you. They've got to trust that you're going to get them through this really difficult period, or that you're going to sort that client out that's having a problem because something went wrong or whatever it is. And it's that sort of, it's almost, the leadership bit is also, you've got to trust yourself as a leader and not sort of go, oh, I'm not really sure. Or if you're not sure, say you're not sure. So but having that network of people that can support you and kind of build you up a bit when you're feeling like, oh, I don't think I can do this. This is really hard. I've had a really difficult year, or whatever it is, or this last course has just been an absolute nightmare. And then just being like, just keep going. Everything you're doing is brilliant. We really love your business. But also, if everything goes wrong, you've done your best. And there's that sort of thinking as well. You have to kind of take on board too.
So there's been some good programs, there's been some good mentors, and where do you kind of get the grit from and the energy to push forward?
I don't know. I think I've always been a very determined person. I had a lot of difficulties in school. So dyslexic, late diagnosed ADHD. So I was always at the bottom of the class, always in the naughty classes in secondary school. Was always,
I don't believe that.
was always a bit disruptive.
Could you tell the teacher what they were doing wrong?
I was just always bored. And I had a lot of challenges all the way through primary school, right the way through to secondary school. And it wasn't until someone said to me, if you don't settle down and actually do some GCSEs, you're not going to be able to have any sort of career that you want to do. And I was like, okay. And I think we had a talk. Someone came in from Nosey Community College to just kind of in year 9 and said, right, if you get 5 GCSEs, A to C, there's these programs open to you, because at that time all I thought was I've got to do A-levels. I can't do A-levels because I'm not academic. I can't write anything. Can't write an essay to save my life. What am I going to do? And it wasn't until this course leader from Nosey College came in and said you can do GMVQ in art and design, and that'll give you 2 A-levels, some GCSEs, and possible entry to university. And I was like, well, I really like art and design. I'm really good at that. I should do that. And then basically from then on, I've just had that focus of I want to do this, and that's almost been the way that I get through the business. Is it's like, okay, I want to go from where we are to over here. Let's go for that. Yes, it's challenging. Yes, it's difficult. The day-to-day at the moment has been really challenging, just because it's 2024 and everybody's business is challenging, and it is very much keep your eye on the prize and just keep going and just try and swerve the obstacles in the way as much as you can. So yeah, it's just constant.
That sort of mix of stoicism and that kind of sports psychology piece of, okay, there's the prize, there's the goal, everything else is just noise. Train, practice.
Just try and keep going as best you can. And some days it's like, well, actually I need rest today, and just say, I'm going to take a rest. I'm just going to do some light things, and I'm not going to get too heavily involved, because I just need to give my brain some space. And quite often, once you've given yourself a bit of space, you're then like, okay, I am ready to tackle that problem now, because I've given it some breathing room. We don't always have to be on 24 hours a day, because I've done that and you get tired very quickly. And yeah, it is trying to find that, managing that energy, those energy levels is challenging.
So that must be an inspiration to the team around you, to have the, to lead and then see them, that they're seeing you put the effort in, the time in, and then that gives you that capacity to to just come off the gas for a little bit and know that you've built a great team that can
Yeah.
keep pushing forward?
Yeah, like our team is absolutely brilliant. Like we just got such a great set of people, and yeah, they really love what they do, and they really committed to the business, to what we want to do. And I think it offers them that kind of, because we do a lot of tech for good, where we're very much looking towards more kind of circular economy design, make sure that's built in. We're very future looking as well, so we're not always focusing on the day to day as a business and as a concept. We're like, actually, we really want to reach for this thing over here. Let's try and get there. And the team are they're all bought into it, but they also really like all the different projects they get to work on, and the different sectors, and the knowledge that they gain through all those different projects. Because go to health and social care, or medical devices, or fish counting sensors, or whatever it is, every single thing is completely different. So there's no routine, monotony, like we're doing the same thing every day. Okay, I've done this for 2 years and I'm ready to move on. It's sort of like there's just something new and different all the time.
What part of kind of you and Patrick do you bring to the recruitment process? How have you built that culture? How have you built that team?
So our kind of theory behind how we choose people, we have a really good set of interview questions, obviously, but one of the key things that we look for is, are you going to be adaptable to any sort of changing situation, whether that's the sector you're about to produce a device for, or you need to go and research something, or you might need to learn a new set of skills so that we can actually deliver this client project to the best that we can. And you get a good sense of that just through talking and having those kind of conversations, particularly towards the end of the interview. So obviously there's the set of questions, and then there's the asking, so what questions do you have for us? What sorts of things do you do over the weekend? How involved were you in certain things? And anyone that's say what are your sort of hobbies and interests, and they say, well, I like reading and playing football. Sort of like, is there anything else that you do? What else do you do outside of that? What are you interested in? So if you like reading, what sort of books are you reading? And sort of really kind of get into them as people, because it's really important to have people that really want to build their own knowledge and have got this love of learning. Like, actually, I really enjoy learning this new thing, or being basically placed on a very steep learning curve as well. Because if you suddenly got to design a hydrogen domestic hydrogen sensor from nowhere, and there isn't one that already exists, you've got to be a certain mindset to be like, yeah, we can do this. That's no problem.
Hold my beer.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's the type of people we're
proper
looking
old-fashioned engineering mindset of a small engineering kind of workshop is, yeah, I'm a machine one of those, yeah.
Yeah, we can do that.
But we can do that,
yeah. We've not done that before. We'll figure it out. Give it 10 minutes.
One of the things we work on really hard whenever people are always nervous when they come into interview. So it's just you can get so much more out of somebody, get such a better read if you just get them past the nerves bit.
Yeah.
So I always coach people is an interview's not something that's done to you. An interview is something you are participating in, and you're as much interviewing the people on the other side of the table. What advice would you give to somebody kind of coming out of university, maybe coming from another industry or from a different background, who's going into a tech job or going into a manufacturing job? What would you say to them, to help calm those nerves and bring their best characteristics out and their personality out in an interview?
I suppose it's knowing what you bring to that job is really important, because yes, you might be coming from a slightly different industry. So, for example, me coming from design background, one of my jobs was working as a print technician in LJMU. So, coaching students on how to print things, teach them health and safety, all of that. But you wouldn't think that was relevant to running a tech company. But actually, because we do manufacturing, I've done so much health and safety work that comes into running our workshop. And then you've got project management skills. There's so many different skills, and so much that your life can kind of bring into a job. So I think the confidence is knowing what you're really good at, what you've got to offer, and also you're not going to know how to do the job you're interviewing for until you've done it for 6 months, because there's a whole training, the settling in, there's understanding all of their processes. So I think particularly from like a woman's point of view as well, I know in the past, like I've looked at things, so like being on the advanced manufacturing board, you know, I was a bit like, well, I've not done this before. Should I apply? But people were like, you should apply. I think you'd be really great. So I put my CV in, had to do an interview, and I was thinking, we're a tiny business. You're not going to want us on the combined authority board, but actually,
you're exactly the sort of business
they're
they need.
exactly the sort of business that I need. So I think taking that, like, it's a really great experience to try and step into something new, and you know, you can own that as well. Like, I am looking to shift careers, but these are all of the things that I bring. This is all the research that I've done about the company. The company sounds brilliant. It's why I'm here. So you know, not take a chance, but you know, show you're willing to learn. You're willing to be bad at it for the first 6 months, because everybody is, and you know, and just kind of just own what you bring, I think, is the most important thing. Yeah.
What you bring. That's great. So many people look at, you know, they judge themselves in terms of CVs of the educational attainments or the experience, and so much of it is attitude over everything else. You can kind of pick up on somebody as actually, you'll fit. Yeah. Fantastic. So for you next year, 2025, we're filming this in 2024. What's on the agenda for Jen and DefProc?
So next year we've basically got, hopefully, lots of really big kind of projects. So one of the things I've wanted to do with the business, we used to do lots of smaller projects. So maybe 3 months, 6 months, and then maybe a 12 months. I'm now looking, as part of the growth strategy, is bringing in more of those bigger projects. And next year, because obviously everything's under NDA, so I can't say anything, but next year we should basically have at least 2 or 3 longer term projects. We've been written into a number of grant applications as innovation partners. We've got new clients that have come in towards the end of this year. So it should be a really good year, particularly for growth in the business. But yeah, it's I can never say anything about what we do until we've actually done it.
Well, that's amazing. Good news story. You know, 2024 has been a tumultuous year. It's been a year of transition and holding your breath.
It's been very hard.
For you guys to have come through that, and 2025 is going to be the year stuff lands, and your biggest headache, I guess, is going to be hiring bigger team and growing the business. And
to be honest, it'll be really great to be able to to grow the team. But 2024 has been really challenging. But it's because it's it's that transition period. So we just have to embrace. What was it somebody said to me the other day? You have to embrace the chaos and then the stillness and wait for the new order.
You're gonna get a vacation next year.
So well, we did actually get one this year. We did have 2 weeks off, and then we got 2 weeks off for Christmas. But I'm looking forward to a bit more time off next year. Fantastic. Would be great.
Fantastic. Jen Fenner, thank you for coming and talking to us.
Thanks for having me. It's been great. It's been brilliant.